The meeting to order and start with the Pledge of Allegiance, or flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. I will entertain a motion for approval of the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the agenda as given.
Okay, so move. Any discussion on the agenda? All those in favor of approving the agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, it passes. All right, public comment on agenda items. We have nobody who has signed in. Is there anybody who would like to? Okay. That was easy. Next, we will go to board member comments, and we're going to change it up a little bit tonight. If we allow 3 minutes for our public to speak, so I would like us to limit our comments to 3 minutes as well, and just a show of fairness. So you can start, Leanna.
I used to do long ones, and then I shortened it to nothing. But nothing huge except for the. It was just put out that our lunch.
Yes.
The breakfast
Michelle's
and lunch.
here to talk about it.
That's so exciting, so I'm not going to spoil
Don't
that.
steal our
but
thunder.
Yay, I'm not going to. I think I can't think. I've been dealing with dry eye, something that doesn't have anything to do with this except for staring at a screen and trying to read this while my eyes are crackling, and had no idea that that was a huge thing, but I guess it is.
All right.
So I think that's it.
For me, I haven't received an answer yet, but I've been in contact or trying to make contact with State Board of Education regarding a clarification with regards to, they've been given new rule-making authority by the legislature from the last session, and some of the rules in regards to college credits and different programs, and there is just some more or less technical questions I had with regards to some of the language. So I'll keep everybody updated on that as it comes along. But for the most part, the WAC changes, the changes to the Washington Administrative Code that they're sort of proposing are fairly positive, and I think it really simplifies things and makes it a lot easier for our kids to graduate and to find a pathway earlier. And even if they decide to change paths, they're not behind.
That's right.
Once they change those paths. So all in all, I believe that to be very good news.
I don't think I have done anything officially since graduation. I was very gratified, though, just in the routine course of things, to read over the portions of our agenda for today, talking about student success and particularly about responsible citizens. And I thought I was given a great deal of hope against the background of contemporaneity to find the emphasis we have on respecting diversity, respecting differences of opinion, and treating others in a civil manner. It just gave me a feeling like I'd just come from church.
Okay.
I have very little to report, other than just personal stuff. I have a new cell phone. I still don't understand it.
Same number?
Same number, and I've learned how to turn it off. So it's off.
All right, little progress.
Aside from that, let's see. Well, not much else to report. I just want to say thank you to Dana and the school district officially for the arrangement that we have worked out for at the Girl Scout camp for forest fire evacuation and school buses and stuff that we would pay for in the event of, and we hope there's no event of. So there we go. That's helped the girls and the leadership at the camp to feel so much more secure, since it's really difficult to get out of there. And they're still remembering Camp Fire last summer in California. And so that's it.
Great. All right, so we move on to number 2, the consent agenda, and I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I would like to move that we approve the consent agenda as it is given to us. I will have some comments.
Okay, and I will open up for comments.
Okay. Several things. So this will probably put Dana on, not on the spot, but just for clarification purposes. And looking at the policy number, 3241, the student discipline, that, we apparently approved that just 5 months ago?
Yeah.
And now it's a complete change, and it was a new policy 5 months ago, and a completely, total rewrite, everything thrown out, and it's a brand-new one. What's going on there?
Legislation. In the 5 years I've been here, we've made 6 different changes to that policy as a result of legislation. In the, not this past legislature, but the previous one, they set up a 2-year set of rule changes that were going to take place incrementally. That's why we changed it 5 months ago and now have to change it again to cover the way that schools are allowed to enforce discipline and the things that we can do, and also what the rights of families and kiddos are. In one of the things you'll notice in this new set, there are some additional rights for parents in the discipline process, at least as far as being present during conversations. But there are also some cleaning up of some really unwieldy practices for schools. So, for example, when I was a principal, and for all our principals since, it used to never make sense if you're suspending a kid because they, beat somebody up or something, and you've determined and you're going to do this suspension, and then if it was more than a 3-day suspension, you would have to tell them they were going to be suspended for 5 days, we'll say, and then they had 3 days that they got to stay at school while they decided if they wanted to appeal it or not before you could impose the suspension. So that little weirdo thing came out. Now, if we're going to suspend somebody, we suspend them. There's still appeal and different things, but it works differently. So it's much more common sense in how we do our work. It gives parents an opportunity to be present during the conversations you're having with their student when you're checking. It doesn't give them the opportunity to interrupt and try to take over, but they get to be there and know what you're saying and asking their kids about if they choose to be. So overall, I think it's going to be really good. As you said, it's a complete overhaul. So starting earlier this spring, we put our assistant principals in charge of pulling this apart and really getting to understand it. They have created new documents that will be given to all our families in a student discipline handbook. And they've worked really hard to make that easy to understand what your rights and responsibilities are and what the schools are. So they've been working on that. In addition, across the state, school districts are sending their staff to trainings at their ESDs that Porter Foster Rorick has put together. You know, it's one of the education attorney groups. And we've asked them to just come here and meet individually with our principals and assistant principals. So they are going to do that in the first week of August and make sure that everybody understands all the legal ramifications of these new requirements, because they're very complex. I think once people are practicing them, they will feel more common sense in some ways than what we have done before. And there is an emphasis on, it's not about punishment, it's about learning what you did wrong, making restitution, and, you know, sometimes, yes, having consequences, but it's not just assuming that if we spank you enough, you're going to learn not to do it. There's other pieces to the process now.
Right. Well, on that basis, I like what I'm hearing from you about that. I very much like the idea of kids don't have to be perfect. I would feel really funny if we never had any incidences of kids misbehaving or needing referrals. That would be too perfect. I want kids to goof up so that they can learn from it and that sort of thing, because they will, that kind of thing. Okay, on the next policy was 3240. I was really surprised when I read it, because where's the rest of the changes? And then I finally figured out it's been retired. And it says so there in a different spot. So yahoo, one less policy. And then 3200 seems to kind of partly deal with both the retirement and the previous one that you just referred to. But that was it on the policies. Next, I had a comment on the surpluses. This one was funny for me. The surplus with Belfair Elementary in particular. It was 111 pages long. And about 95 of the pages were, what does it say? Imagine it. Books, materials of being surplused out. And boy, that poor guy, Dan King, had to use his stamp for his signature about 95 times on just one type of item. But you must have been throwing out the entire
That was
curriculum.
our old reading curriculum. The new one is due in the warehouse any day. And that one, didn't really meet when the state made the change to the new reading standards, we had just recently adopted that curriculum, so we've been trying to make it work. And it didn't meet the standards, so now we have wonderful new curriculum that the teachers will be implementing K-5, and that all had to go away.
So I did have one question about the Imagine It. Almost all of it was books of some sort, type of resources, both books for kids and some for teachers and stuff, but it also referred to something, manipulations on 1 or 2 pages. What is
Yeah,
manipulations?
manipulatives. So you might, like if you're doing a kindergarten introductory lesson, some of the reading curriculums come with like felt board pieces, how remember in like Wanda the Witch I used to watch on TV would tell the story and put up a little felt Red Riding Hood on the board and then tell the next part of the story. So those kinds of things.
That would go along with Imagine. Great. Okay, enough on that. Let's see. I think, no, that's really it. I had questions on something that's not in the consent agenda. That'll come later. So thanks.
Any other discussion on the consent agenda?
I just have to say that on our personnel report, I am sorry to see Reggie Smithson leave. She made a huge impact on Mason, and now he gets to write her letters. She gave him envelopes, little stamp. It was the saddest thing. They said, how should we tell him? And I'm like, face to face, just do a one-on-one. And it was the saddest. They had called me and told me, and he came home and he was like in tears, and he's like, she's not coming back. And I'm like, oh my God. I thought he would take it a little bit better, but he did not. So I'm gonna be sad. But I know somebody great will take her spot.
All right. And we have a motion to approve the consent agenda. I will signify by saying, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? All right, consent agenda is approved. We go to now the general fund budget extension. Ashley, you're up.
So we started with the best first. So, okay.
Wait, you have to adjourn to a public
Oh,
hearing.
yeah.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I meant to do that. So we're going to adjourn this meeting and go into a public hearing, just like doing that, for purposes of public input regarding the general fund budget extension. Would anyone like to, maybe after Ashley talks about it?
Okay, so there's a lot of moving pieces to this that I tried to depict as clearly as possible, and I'm going to try to walk you through it. Basically, the end result is the fact that we're requesting a $1,474,946 budget extension, bringing our general fund budget, which is the budget's based upon the expenditures, bringing our budget to $33,528,644. So this extension is broken out based upon this sheet up here. So our 18-19 budget was $32,053,698. This is the amount that's actually in the F-195 budget that was done last summer. Our current year-to-date expenditures through June 30th of 2019, so that's our last full check run, we were at $27,716,405. That gives us a remaining budget capacity to get us through August 31st of just over $4 million. Now, we average about $2.2 million in payroll alone every month. So I can look at that and already say that we're not going to have enough money. So our total encumbered amount of payroll remaining is $4,312,000. And we currently have about $1.5 million worth of open purchase orders that have encumbered balances. These are for services that are year-round services, utilities. We have staff that work for us during the course of the year, but they get paid through professional service contracts. All of that goes through those encumbrances. It also is our curriculum adoption, which is $360,000 is included in that 1.5 million as well. There was our final running start bill, which was $178,000. So there's all of these big chunks of year-end bills that are included in the 1.5 million worth of open encumbrance. That would put our total expenditures over our current budget at the $1,474,946. So just under $1,475,000. So that's how I got to that number. Now, how to explain it to make it a less scary number is the fact that our year-to-date revenues through June 30th is just over 27 million. I'm currently still expecting about 5.8 million through apportionment through August. The way that the apportionment works, the last few months of the school year, they give you your lowest percentages, and they up your percentage of collection in the summer because that's their new fiscal year, so they can afford to pay more during that time frame. So we get 10% of our apportionment in July and 10% in August. So I'm still expecting 20% of our overall revenues to come within the next 2 months. On top of that, I don't know if you guys were notified, but the state shorted us $120,000, and not just us, all districts statewide, of transportation funds because they ran out of money.
So they just didn't pay us everything in June that they were supposed to?
They didn't pay us $120,000 in June, but they promised and gave us an IOU and said that they would pay us in July.
Can we take that to the bank?
I will tell you on the 24th. So we're expecting, on top of what I'm already expecting, I was already expecting about 2.8 million in just general apportionment. Yeah, the 120,000, I'm expecting closer to 3 million of revenue. Now, on top of that, we, through some hard work of some administrators, received 4 grants very last minute in May that equated to over $100,000 worth of new funding for the district. But the caveat was that we needed to spend it by June 30th. Now, these type of grants are all reimbursement based. So we spend, then we receive reimbursement. So that was about $130,000 right there that we needed to make sure we have capacity so we can spend it and get it back.
So that was in the budget?
That was not in the budget. These are grants that we didn't even think we'd be able to get. They weren't even open.
Okay.
So this was just, we, because of how our buildings, some of our buildings were identified, it opened up the ability for us to apply for the grants. We applied for them. Not only did we get 3, well, technically 4 building level grants because we got it for HomeLink, we got it for James A. Taylor, we got it for Sand Hill, and we got it for the high school. We also got a district-wide grant as well. So those were huge pots of money, but we got them and we had to immediately turn around and spend them because we had to encumber and spend the funds by June 30th. Yeah. So it was good. It allowed us to get a bunch of things and do a bunch of things at the very end of the school year that we needed to do. But we had to spend it and then turn around, and once you spend, because the budget's based upon the expenditures, you end up having to increase. So what ends up playing out then is our estimated 18-19 revenues is just over 33 million. Now, our budgeted revenues were just over 32 million. So technically, the district received $1 million, an actual $1 million of real revenue, excess revenue over the course of this last year. A lot of that was due to the increased enrollment. So $1 million of what we're requesting, we already received. Then the 18-19 expenditures over revenues, we would still be over our revenues by about $510,000. Now, when we did the budget last year, because we do that transfer from general fund into debt service fund to pay for 2 loans and the bond for the stadium, we do that, it's about just under $500,000 that we transfer out of the general fund. When we do that, it tends to put us into the deficit so that our expenditures are over our revenues. So when we did the budget, we were already going to be $110,000 over. So what this does, by requesting this extension, it puts us over by $400,000. With that being said, $350,000 of it is for the curriculum adoption. We played with the idea of, do we code it to this year or do we code it to next year? Well, we know where we are this year. So I opted to state, let's code it to this year, because next year when we're doing the budget, technically it would be our lowest revenue year because we're still rolled back on levy. And we don't know what our enrollment's going to be. So it's a safe bet to do this year. So that's why you're seeing the $400,000 over. Now, when you're looking at fund balance, how does this impact us, okay? Our total beginning fund balance was actually higher than what we had estimated. We had estimated it at $2.5 million. It ended up coming in at just over $2.6 million. Our estimated ending fund balance, if you take the $400,000 off, that would be about $2.24 million. So that puts our minimum fund balance percentage at 7% instead of 8%. Now, with that being said, the $1.5 million that's currently encumbered, Dana and I have already talked. We've already talked to staff. We've already talked to admin. Spending through August 31st is at a bare minimum, meaning unless it absolutely needs to be spent, it's not being spent. So the goal is to request the extension for a worst possible case scenario so that we have the capacity, because we do not want to go over budget. We get dinged by OSPI if we do. But to ensure that we're spending the least amount as possible through August 31st to ensure that our fund balance is over that 8%. But what I wanted to do was be very transparent that if we were to truly spend every one of those dollars, we would be at 7%.
If we didn't have to, well, if you put that 350,000, say we don't adopt that curriculum this year, where does that raise the?
It would be 8%. It does raise it to 8%.
Is that considered an unfunded mandate? Because
No, and you guys already adopted it?
No, right, but having to change the curriculum because of meeting standards.
No, it's not.
Yeah. So, and now the thing being is we toyed with the idea of moving the $350,000 into next year.
Mm-hmm.
But like when we
Next
go
year's
through the
gonna be
budget
tight.
presentation, it's going to be tight. And so if we move it into next year, what I don't want to do is portray a budget that shows us being at a greater deficit.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather have us potentially have fund balance capacity sort of eat some of that cost, but with the idea that, I mean, to give an example of how we're monitoring this, we had a staff member purchase some supplies, and we have put a strict no purchasing block, right? So they purchased supplies, and we found out about it, and I made them send them back.
I think what's important
Yeah.
to know is a big part of this, what's all this huge encumbrance, is people encumbered their spending for next year, but because we're still in this year, it counts against this year. And so they open POs and stuff. So Ashley, between now and next time you talk to her, and her staff are closing those POs because they shouldn't have been opened. People were trying to get a head
Proactive.
start on things. And so we have some rule changes that we're going to make about how and when they can do things, and that will make us not have this kind of a conversation again.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Is this something if they wanted supplies and they paid for it themselves, could they?
No,
be
we will
reimbursed?
not.
Okay.
No, yeah.
I was wondering
Yeah,
that before.
we're just trying to be very clear as far as the spending. We, technically, a school district in the midst of the summer, we should be paying for utilities. We should be paying for training and travel. We should not have all these other expenditures. So it's just making sure that we're very clear with those guidelines that because we did put a stop on purchasing as of June 1st, but it's just making sure that it trickles all the way down and everybody is fully
Following the
understands
rules.
that means nothing unless you get an exception to the rule, that we are not paying for anything, because what we see that happens is people don't understand the impact. They view it, they're just their circle. They don't understand this, that it impacts this. So like Dana was saying, these open POs, I have about 33 pages of open POs right now. So that's worst case scenario. But staff they're not here. So I don't know if they have an invoice that's going to be coming to us against one of those POs. So if I don't potentially budget for it, and it does come in, it would put us over budget. And then I have to write an apology letter to OSPI.
Good job.
I would like to ask, and this is just for me, is when these grant opportunities come up, I don't want to by any means hamstring you when these come up, but just a forewarning to us in the event that we're in another one of these spots, because we did get a good grant.
Yeah.
Maybe it's, 6,
Yeah.
7 figures for whatever reason. It's a
Give a heads up.
heads up on that. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm all about finding those, but if it's
Yeah.
having to affect a budget process before we get the reimbursement
Yep.
on it, I mean, that's a huge expense to take on.
Yeah.
Who does
No, it
that?
is, and right now it's a long shot, but
Yeah.
we're planning for a federal grant that would come close to 7 figures. And hopefully we will get notified during this budget process, so if we get it, we will build it into the budget ahead of
That'd
time.
be
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Who goes and finds the grants?
It's a group
Staff.
effort. There's a lot of us that do. A lot of administrators tend to be responsible for finding grants in their wheelhouse, so in their area that they're
Oh, yeah.
responsible for, because it helps offset the cost of just running all of our programs.
There's so many out there. I know I got into the process. It's amazing.
Yeah.
That's cool.
One of the really great things about these grants that we did get is they're continuing grants, meaning it wasn't just for
Wow.
that 1 year. We get this money
Yeah.
for the next 3 years. And so that's money we can actually count on and I can build into the budget. So it's already been built into the budget for next year.
That's amazing.
I was happy to see that we got the money because of the fact that I know that in the future years, we're also getting it. So.
Very cool.
But, so that's where we're at with the budget extension. The goal is, even if we were to cut 100,000 from that 1.5 million, it's gonna put us high enough up to where we're gonna have 8%. But again, for transparency purposes, I didn't wanna come to you guys and not give you the full picture, so that is the picture.
I appreciate that.
Okay, so, do you have any other questions?
I do
comments?
not.
Okay,
Anybody else? have any
Appreciate
questions?
it.
Okay.
As clear a report as probably possible.
I
on
tried
this
it.
difficult
Yeah,
situation
exactly.
in which we find ourselves.
Perfect. Okay. Sound good?
All right.
Thank you so much.
Would anybody like to speak to the budget extension?
Back to Linda's clear as mud.
Yeah.
And quote I've been using since I was on the board back in the 70s. I had in my office the way business back in the Army in a heartbeat. I wouldn't even think twice about it.
Yeah, that's a
Insanity.
little bit disappointing with the not getting $120,000.
Yeah.
At least they say it's coming.
Oh, that's, yeah.
At
Mon-
least.
Money's in the bank.
Yeah.
So,
Part of what was disappointing about that, there was no advance notice. It was when the check was supposed to be here or when the money was supposed to be in the account. They said, oh, by the way,
well, and I recognize that, we maintain a fund balance to be able to take on those unforeseen issues. I mean, we're not a bank. We shouldn't
No.
be sitting on a huge
no.
account. This is why we have it. But at the same time, it's the decades of conservative fiscal management that's saved us from what our neighbors are having to face right now. So, and yeah, get the leak now. So, okay. So I would entertain the motion to approve and adopt Resolution 14-G-19, which is the general fund budget extension as presented by Ashley.
You have to go back into a meeting.
Oh. Where's my parliamentarian when I need it?
I wasn't paying attention.
Summer.
All right, so we'll conclude the public hearing and go into the regular meeting. Entertain a motion for Resolution 14-G-19, the general fund budget extension.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we vote the extension to this as we've discussed.
All right, any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, that passes. Thank you, Ashley, for that report.
Here,
Number 4, board development and linkage, and we'll go into the superintendent update.
Right, and I'm going to just make a couple of quick points and then have Ashley do the budget status report and then do the teaching learning update. But related to some of our frustrations with our partners at the state and funding, as you know, in January of 2020, we will be transitioning to the state, the SEB for benefits for our staff. And we received the information about which potential offerings will be available to our staff here in our district. And we're very concerned, and this will be a big part of what conversations I have with legislators in the coming year, beginning with the meeting we already have set on August 1st, that just like we're battling regionalization, dealing with how we're funded for salaries, they are regionalizing what's available to our staff for benefits. And I just don't even, at this point, I'm writing down my thoughts, so I'm very clear with with Sherry Appleton and others when we meet on August 1st, but this is just egregious. And I wanted you to be aware of it as soon as we got the full information.
Would you pass that on to me as well?
I will.
Thank you.
yeah, I just wanted to add to that, since I'm also still interested in this stuff. Any notes I get in advance.
Yes,
will
we'll
help
make
me
sure
to
you
work
both
up
have
my own
them.
pitch.
So that was very frustrating. Another little bit of frustrating thing financially working with the state is, you know, we've talked about in the past, every year our district and practically every district applies for something called, oh, now I'm forgetting the word, safety net, for when we have special education expenditures that are extraordinary for specific children. And it's a very complicated process, and when you apply for safety net, they look at your application very carefully, and they look at the student's IEP very carefully. And you can be denied for things like forgetting a comma in a sentence in an IEP.
Nice.
And that is part of the rules. The reason that you get safety net is because you have extraordinary expenses. So we were very shocked to get and we are combating OSPI with this. We are not just going to take it lying down. But we got our response to our safety net application this year, and it said, well, you filled out everything correctly, and yeah, you deserve it, but since you're in the black in your budget, and you didn't go in the hole to make these extraordinary expenditures, we're not giving you the money. Which is not part of the rules that govern safety net. So we will be continuing a conversation about that.
Punishing us for virtue.
Punishing us for managing our money effectively. In fact, they told Ashley when she called them, if she had gone in the red, we would have gotten the money.
No joke, like literally hire another person so you can make sure you're in the red next time, and then when you put in your application, then we would pay you.
But you'd actually have to spend it, not transfer it into another fund.
No, you have to spend it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but that is
Spend money
not,
to make money.
that is not anywhere in the rules for safety net, so they're violating their own rules, so that's what I'm basing my argument on.
Is
And I'll
that-
keep you
is that
informed.
something that we're gonna
Thank you
have
for
to
fighting, yeah.
take like legal representation to end up fighting?
We may.
And is it worth?
It won't, I don't know if it'll be worth that. I'm going to talk to the Assistant Superintendent of Special Education next, and then Chris Reichdahl. And then we'll see what steps I take after that.
Okay. Well, it might. I don't. Yeah. I mean,
It will certainly
if
be
it's
part
happened
of-
to us, it's probably happened to other people too.
It probably has, but it is a big concern, and it would not be something that would make constituents around the state happy that the state is telling people to not be efficient with their money. So
Cool.
we'll keep you up to date.
Well, appreciate that. There are people standing by to scramble at a moment's notice when they direct the target.
And it's good to know also with that SEB, we're paying for that whether our employees take it or not.
Yeah.
And so that's even better. So when they had a better option with PEP, but that's neither here nor there.
Exactly.
All right. Oh, I just had your presentation up too, and
Okay.
I'm ready.
We'll do our update for the month of June. Okay, so starting with our other funds, capital projects, we saw a little bit of activity during the month of June, so fund balance dropped to $2.6 million. We are gonna start actively seeing more expenditures through that. We had contractors on site at the stadium today, was their first day. And then on top of that, there's work that's already being started on the softball field. So both projects are now underway, so we're not going to see a balance like that for very long. Debt service, we are currently sitting at $2.6 million. You'll see during my 1920 budget presentation, just over $1 million of that $2.6 million is state forest money. And the other 1.6 is collections to pay for the bond.
Okay.
ASB is currently sitting at $376,000. We don't expect to see very much movement, obviously, in the next 2 months for ASB. Our transportation vehicle fund is currently sitting at $57,000. Next month, or the month of August, is when we get our depreciation payment for buses that we're expecting, and it's going to be about $120,000. And so we'll see the fund balance increase there. We're also, I don't know if you guys remember back to October when we had one of our smaller buses, it was hit and totaled. The bus is finally on its way, the replacement bus. And so we'll have sort of an in and out of that account as well. We're gonna get a check cut by the insurance company, and then we immediately cut the check to the bus company. So it will probably net out. You won't actually end up seeing anything increase, but I just thought I'd let you know that we will be seeing that activity though. Enrollment, we already reported on June last month when we got it, but overall our enrollment average for the year was 2,248, and that was from the high. We saw our highest enrollment amount in October of 2,268, and then over the year we dropped about 20 FTE total, and you know, that could be due to graduations, all of that kind of stuff over the course of the year. So that's it for the other funds and for enrollment. So for the general fund. So caveat, prior to getting into this one, it's summer, we're spending lots of grant funds, and I'm doing claims on Monday, and then I'll do another claim mid-month August as well. But with that being said, general fund revenues, currently revenue-wise, we would be trending to be at about 7.34. Again, that is with all of the encumbrances that are currently in the system. Total actual revenues to date, we're trending about 84%, about 2% over where we were projected to be. Local sources were well over, we're currently sitting just about 104%, so those are your property taxes and such. And state sources, we're currently sitting at 82%, or about 3% over where we were projected to be at this time. The biggest piece that I wanted to point out here under the top 10 sources of revenues is our state forest. This is one that I actively track from month to month and is very exciting for me. At this point last year, we had collected about $1 million in the general fund for state forest. We're currently at $127,000, almost $128,000. I'll still take it. So I've been seeing active collection of about anywhere from $20,000 to $50,000 every month for like the last 4 months. So I would expect to see that over July and August as well. So that's where we're at for our general revenues. So expenditures, again, it shows at about 7.32 if everything we have encumbered actually got spent. We are trending higher on obviously the salary and benefit side. A big piece of that was obviously the negotiated pay raises that occurred after the budget had closed. Other than that, there's nothing super surprising, shocking, or different than previous months as far as our actual expenditures go. So our general fund month-end balance, one of the things that I included in this one versus I I have the ability to either show you the trending fund balance in future months or cut that off so that you don't see it. I included it because, as you can see, it looks scary when you look at June and you see where our fund balance is, but you can see based upon what our revenue collections are supposed to be, over the course of July and August, you can see that it increases again. So this is all based upon revenues we expect through apportionment and our past 5 years trends and our current encumbrances. So that's real data. So our fund balance should go back up there here at the end of August. So the financial summary, so again, this is a higher oversight for the financial summary. One of the scariest pieces here is going to be that $807,000 right there of expenditures over revenues. Part of that is the $120,000 we got shorted from the state. Another part of that is the grant funds that we spent in order to be able to get the reimbursement and ensure we have the grant for the next 3 years. Then a piece of that at this point is the increased payroll for teachers and the increase that we also gave to classified staff. You're going to see this number go down, though, over the next 2 months because our apportionment is more than what our bills are.
Curriculum is in that one too, right?
Yep. Yep, it sure is. So, but we'll see that gap close over the next 2 months. Our revenues are more than our expenses in the month of July and August. The next page, so that's your closer look into all of those expenses and where they are as far as actual programs. Again, nothing shocking there. The money's being spent where we would expect it to be spent. So the final one, this is where we can see where we're over as far as each individual program expenditure. And revenue. So we can see that we're $207,000 over our local tax, so those property tax collections, that's really good. That means people are paying back due taxes at this point because we're over 100%. So that's helpful for us. We also have our state general apportionment and special purpose apportionment. So those are just our general apportionment dollars from the state. So we have about an extra $700,000 there, which is helping offset the deficit that we see below. That $362,000 that you're seeing negative on the revenue side, that's all due to the federal revenues that I have to wait and claim once we've actually expended the money. That positive $652,000 though is helping offset where we are over on the expenditures, leading to the point where we're technically only $145,000 actually over, if that makes sense. Do you guys have any questions, comments about June?
Just thank you for explaining the overage on the taxes.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that is a nice one to see. So we do have the ability to recertify back taxes every November, and I make sure to lump it all in. So
I appreciate the way you prepare our intestines for shocks to come. And I find that when they finally do come,
yeah,
I'm braced for them. So I really appreciate your anticipation of
perfect.
Disaster feelings.
Yeah, exactly.
On our part, and I really appreciate this pre-explanation, and I really applaud you for those dotted lines that
Yep.
you come in to show what's normal and what will no doubt happen to level things out.
Perfect. Good. Yeah, I definitely don't want to keep you guys in the dark. I'm trying to be as transparent as possible as far as where we're at, but where we're expected to be. Because I know sometimes if you're not in the numbers every day, it can be scary to look at an end picture. So.
Well, were I ever to be questioned on this, I'd be able to refer to this stuff and to point to people something about why we are in the situation we are and why we're fiscally prudent despite temporary appearances.
Exactly. Exactly. Craig, are you good? Okay.
Never be blind.
I appreciate the news.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
Perfect.
like paper. So you can scroll and my eyes get tired and I'm like, what am I even reading? Then when I have paper, I'm like, oh.
Exactly.
And I can write on it.
So,
I'm going to do just a couple quick things
And then-
first.
okay.
Oh, real quick, for next month, when things start coming in, just give us an update on those state money. and
yeah,
grants.
Yeah.
perfect.
Just-
Yeah, no, I'll.
We will be including that in our
Yeah,
report.
I'm definitely keeping an eye on those.
Cool, thank you.
Just a couple quick things under the section under teaching and learning update. You'll notice a copy of the letter of agreement that we had with both ESD 113 and 114. What that details is our transition plan for our early learning program partners from our previous partner with ESD 113 to our new partner, our own ESD 114. So that's what that document's all about. We're very excited about the transition. We had, even this week, the Head Start teachers were here at the district office, meeting with families, doing child find and getting kids signed up. It was really fun to have little kids run through the office and say, "Hi, I'm Lilith. Who are you?" So it was a good experience, and I think we're going to be very excited to have our new partners in our early learning center. And then both elementary schools presented President's Award for Excellence to students this year, although Sand Hill sent their letter to us and asked us to include it in the board packet. But I do want to be very clear that at assemblies at both schools,
Where's Belfast's
children
letter?
were recognized. We will make sure they have their letter in there next year.
Yeah, that's good.
He
Okay?
was busy doing those.
And the more we can do.
Yes.
Signing all those pages.
The more
Capital.
that can be done to publicize that, so much the better.
Capital projects, well, one of the things that you know that we have done is we've added additional support in HR because we're a school district with over 400 employees and we had just two people, Carolyn and Amy, doing all of the human resources
Yeah.
work, which is a very small department for that many employees. So we moved Sharon from our front office to there, but she is retaining the social media part of her job, and she will be expanding her social media outreach on behalf of the district. So she does a very good job. And then we hired a new receptionist just this week, which isn't reflected in the personnel report, but many of you know Jackie Young, and she will be our front office person. So we're very excited about that. Capital projects, as Ashley kind of let you know, the stadium guys started working today. The softball field is getting their work done as well. So we're very excited to kind of get all of those projects completed. The Peninsula Community Health is moving into their new space at the beginning of next week, and they're getting ready for like their pharmacy inspection and all the things that they have to do to be able to be ready as we get into the beginning of school in August with physicals and everything to be able to serve our students and our staff. So we're very excited to have them there. I do want to take this second to bring Michelle up and have her tell you about the CEP program. Many of you already saw that, and you heard about it from Ms. Kratzer tonight about our new schools that are included in free meals. So, Michelle, welcome.
So we had the CEP program for the past 4 years for the 2 elementary schools, and this was our renewal year. And when I had our 3-year OSPI review of food service, and we talked about it, and Ashley and I talked about it. And based upon some of Hawkins' numbers, we figured that we would see if we could get Hawkins included. So the process that we went through was to make sure how many students in each school were direct certified. So that means that they have benefits like food stamps, TANF, homeless, foster. They're verified through the state directly that they receive benefits. And so the threshold is 40%. So if your school has 40% of students that receive benefits from the state, they can qualify for the CEP program. And so then what they do is they do a multiplier of 1.6%, and that helps account for kids that would qualify by applications and give your claiming percentage. So what we did is we were able to do Belfair, Sand Hill, James Taylor, Hawkins, and the preschool program and group them all together so the strongest school could help carry the schools that were right on the line of qualifying. So the way it ended up working out is that we have ended up having almost 1,600 students district-wide, not including the high school, that qualified for direct cert benefits, is what they call it. And out of that, we had almost 650 students that actually have the benefits. So the way the claiming ends up working out is that with these schools all grouped together, almost 66% of the students will be claimed at a free status, and then 34% roughly will be at a paid status. And so what that means is that I feel that Hawkins is going to be the biggest impact and the highest increase. Our elementaries already have the CEP and they've increased, so we didn't project a huge increase in numbers, just like 2 to 3%. But I do feel that Hawkins will be in the 25 to 30, maybe even higher percentage, because right now we have about 300 kids that eat at Hawkins and the enrollment's 500. So if they all eat for free, we could easily, I'm hoping, get to like 400, 450 kids. I'd like them all to eat, but,
Yeah.
and we'll push for that.
Yeah.
But, so I do feel that that's going to be our biggest increase of population is that middle school group, which is going to be really exciting to see.
So you're saying with the CEP, there would be a portion of the population of students who would still be needing to pay?
No,
No.
they just do a percentage of the
Oh, okay.
reimbursement. So
Okay.
if you have 100 students eat, and it doesn't matter, they can eat based upon their income, they don't ever pay for that.
Okay.
But the state will reimburse us for the
The
free
cost,
status
the
of the
actual
cost at
cost.
65, like 65 of the kids would get the free status reimbursement, and then
Okay.
34 would get the other.
Okay.
And so that's just the way they do the math to figure out our claiming percentages.
So in practice, no one's paying out of
No,
pocket?
no one will pay anything out of
Awesome.
pocket in all those schools.
Except for the people that still have outstanding lunch
Yes,
balances.
they still
do
owe
need to
that
pay those
balance.
off.
It doesn't go away, but obviously they can take time to pay it, but they're at least not accruing a new balance
Okay.
and keep adding to the deficit for that,
Is
which
there a way to
is
find out
great.
what those
Mhm.
outstanding balances are?
Yeah, Michelle knows what they are.
I know them,
Do you?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So, obviously, I'm more than happy to share that with you whenever you'd like.
Yeah.
We've
to know.
already had a community member
Mhm.
who's organizing to pay off the,
Yeah, we do have a great community. It's like last year, they did a fundraiser and took care of Hawkins' negative balances.
Oh, okay.
You know, the negative balances are higher than what we'd like,
Mhm.
just because the legislature's made it so we can't tell anybody they have a negative balance.
Oh,
Oh.
So we can do a phone call home to the parents, but if they don't answer or
Right.
listen, and we can't turn a student away.
right.
And we don't want to turn a student away.
What a good report to go out that says all of our debts have been paid and no further are accruing. That feels good.
well, they haven't been paid yet.
I mean, I'm
Yeah.
saying that
Yes.
it will be.
And
It
that'll
will
be super
and,
exciting,
yeah.
because then, you know, it's like these families won't, you know, keep accruing a balance. Because some of the families, unfortunately, they don't qualify for free maybe by $20
Yeah.
or reduced by
Oh.
$20. And so they still don't make enough to pay the cost of the meal.
Yeah.
So this is a great program. I'm really excited. It lasts for 4 years, and then we have to go through the renewal process again. And then hopefully, you know, if we can get more participation on the high school level, that, you know, each year I'll keep trying, because I can run the numbers every year and see if we can get a higher percentage. We just know that we won't go down for the next 4 years.
Good.
And so that's kind of exciting for us.
Yes, thank you for that work. That's awesome.
Before I came on the board and learned all the ways of of everything, it was one of my visions for all schools. Why aren't we paying for kids to eat? You know, different countries do that in different areas. And when I got on the board and everything, you know, gets thrown in your face and you're like, oh my God, what's going on? But one of the amazing things was you guys already had it in the works and going. And it was like, wow, what a blessing. And to be part of this district, living here and being able to be on the board, that was one of my win feeling of being part of it. So
It's an exciting program, and it's, you know, the goal for us is to try to get as high to 100% participation as possible. You know, and so we just have to keep coming up with new ways to make it, you know, exciting for the kids.
thank you for all that work.
You're welcome. Thank
Here,
you.
here.
Any questions?
Oh, that's
Okay.
just as important as our academic reports that we get. I mean,
Is, when we were,
the
when
direct
we had
correlation.
asked for the amounts that are owed at each school, could that be something that you, like, put together and then just send it to whoever, and then they can send it to us so we can all see it?
Definitely, yes, I'll
That
send
would
it
be really cool.
to Dana, and then she can forward that to you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just as far as the Community Health Center, we did have an agenda item that Joan Moore, our Assistant Director of Facilities and Maintenance, was going to update you, and we were going to include a quick tour over in the space, but Joan became a grandmother overnight and isn't here, so we'll save that for the August agenda.
So many babies this time of year. Everybody knows I'm a baby.
Okay. Ashley, you're up again.
You can't sit down.
Okay, so now we're talking 1920 budget time. So a little precursor, this is a rough draft budget. You guys see the final budget in August as far as the budget that we want to actually have adopted. So this is rough draft. So basically what we've tried to do is we come up with what are our actual revenues going to be in the upcoming year, and then we start playing with the expenditures. If we have $35 million in revenues, how much of guaranteed salary and benefits are we going to have? How much does that leave us for other spending? What it actually equated to this year is we have $31,197,000 worth of salary and benefits. So that's basically already gone. We know that's going to be coming out of that $35 million. So where do we want to spend that $35 million? That's the part that we're working on right now. So things are going to be shifting, okay? And then also another little caveat, don't pay attention to the ending fund balance because that is going to change. What we've done in order to try to prevent what we're doing right, like tonight with that budget extension, we're trying to prevent that next year. One of the things that we have happening at this district that's not necessarily happening at a bunch of other districts is increasing enrollment and steep percentage of increasing enrollment. So when we do the budget is initially based off of you trying to project out your enrollment. But what happens with a lot of districts is they'll project out a number where they think they're going to be and it will be way too high. Then the state pays them an amount that's too large for the months of September through December, and then comes around and turns around and takes it back come January and sends them into the hole. We don't want to go that route. So instead what we've done is we've budgeted an enrollment of 2,260 FTE. Okay, so from that presentation that I gave, we ended the year at 2,248 average. So we upped it by 12, which is still conservative, but still an increase so that we can get that base revenue. That way the state isn't necessarily overpaying us because we're not overestimating our enrollment, okay? And if we did underestimate the enrollment, what I've done is I've built in revenue capacity. Okay, so I put in close to $1 million on the revenue side as a placeholder for if our enrollment does increase. Then we would already have that placeholder sitting there on the revenues because our expenditures would then definitely increase if we have increased enrollment. So we already have the capacity to be able to pull from that. Therefore, we wouldn't have to come back for a budget extension for increased expenditures due to increased enrollment.
And they pay based off actual students, not off the average, right?
Correct. Yep,
So
per month.
Even if we're spending 3 months at, what was it, 2,280, they're paying for that 2,280, not for the 2,247.
Yeah, so
Right.
it works in two different ways, and it
Okay.
depends upon the time of the year. So from September through December, they are paying based upon whatever you budgeted.
Okay.
So they will pay us on 2,260. Come January, they true up. So if they underpaid you or overpaid you, they make that right come January.
Okay.
And then January through June, you get paid on actual enrollment from what was submitted on the P223.
Okay.
And the reason we project enrollment conservatively is we would much rather get more money
Oh,
in
right. Yeah, it's
January
much better
because,
rather have to
and
pay.
Yes.
overpayment
Yeah.
rather than having to pay back.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so, but at the same time, we don't want to come every single summer and be like, okay, we need a budget extension, we had increased enrollment.
right.
So we came up with a method that we feel would be safe to state, okay, well, we think that our enrollment will be here. If it's not, if it ends up being more, we have some revenue capacity set aside to cover those increased expenditures without having to come back for that, that budget extension. So that's what we're doing. So when you see that ending fund balance of $3 million, we haven't spent our capacity yet. We're still working on what that's going to look like. So when you see the finalized budget, you'll have a final number there. So, but we're trying to make a proactive, conservative plan and not make rash decisions and just throw something together.
Is that, I'm gonna try to say this the nicest way I can. That $1 million placeholder, is that's something we're not gonna get dinged up by the auditor saying, you know, you're fudging the numbers here, just to, okay.
No, it's actually fairly common for, like, last year we did have capacity in the budget. We had $650,000 worth of capacity. It's common to have capacity. What's sort of a little bit less uncommon is for the finance director to get up and tell you that you have capacity. So,
In almost every district, what she's trying to say nicely
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
in almost every district in the state, the finance directors create little
Yes.
pockets of money,
Okay.
and they might take that $1 million and break it down into 2, 3, 5, or 10,
Okay.
and kind of hide it in the budget. And as you know, we are very committed to transparency, so we're being very clear here that we are creating capacity, but we're not hiding it from anybody.
Yeah.
Here, here.
And it's going on to one
Right.
account line item, and you'll see it when I present the final budget. It's in one account line item. It is 100% capacity, and it is sitting there in case we do have the increased enrollment. So if we don't have the increased enrollment, we don't spend it. We don't have the revenues. We're not getting the money. But if we do have the increased enrollment, it's there without us having to come back and do this shift again next summer. So that is the goal, but yes, we wanted to be very transparent about what our process was going to look like this year and what you can expect to see in the final budget, but show you where we are currently in the process. So with that being said, the very first page is just general overview of all of your funds, your general fund, your ASB, debt service, capital projects, and transportation. So there's some things that I wanted to point out on this very first fund summary page. General fund, you'll see that we have that transfer out of $434,000. That's that transfer in order to make our loan and bond payment, our stadium bond payment. So that money gets transferred into the debt service fund. One of the loans we are going to be done paying it in 2021. So we're going to start to see that amount come down just a bit. ASBs, it tends to be black and white. They're gonna, what you're seeing for ASB is what you're going to see in the final budget because the students set their budget. So what the students are saying right now is they're going to end up pulling from their fund balance by about $9,000. Students tend to overestimate a lot on their expense side and underestimate on their revenue. So technically, their budget's solid. I have no concerns with the ASB budget. The debt service fund. So this is where we're doing some shuffling that has not occurred in the past with this district. So that big $1 million number, that's going to be my transfer out. So that's the state forest money. Now, over the course of the last 3 years, we've received about $1.3 million in state forest money, okay? We're going to transfer $1 million into the capital projects fund. By transferring $1 million into the capital projects fund, you can see that total revenues line where it says $1,020,000. $20,000 is interest, okay, that we earn on that fund because we have no other money coming into the capital projects fund right now. That $1 million is the transfer. That's going to fund two things. One of them being the roof on Sand Hill, which I believe was in the consent agenda. The estimate came out very nicely, better than I had anticipated. But we like to leave some room for, they pull up a bunch of shingles, find a bunch of rotten wood, have some capacity there to cover it, right? And then the second project that we're going to be covering with this is the early kindergarten portable. Okay, so we needed to try to find a way to fund the program addition because we don't technically have a whole lot of space left in any buildings. But that program's very important to bring to this district, and so we needed space for classroom. So we're currently working with a company to obtain a quote, at which point we'll be bringing it to the board. I just met with them on Friday. But the rest of that capacity is going to be costs of getting the portable, site prep, permitting. It's going to be to the side of Feller, so we're just running the electricity and plumbing from Feller on over to the portable. So that's what's gonna make up that capacity there for that $1 million. The capital projects fund, we tend to budget to spend it every year because technically you never know when you truly are. So right now I have it split between multiple projects, being the roof, the stadium, the softball field now. All of those projects go in. So the goal would be, in a perfect world, we'd complete all those projects and we'd have maybe 100,000 left over. Transportation vehicle fund. We don't necessarily have any plans to purchase a bus in this upcoming year, but I want to give us some capacity just in case something happens for us to be able to spend some of the money. What we're trying to do right now, I'm working with Marine to bank some money in that fund balance so we can get our buses on a regular rotation as far as replacement, so we can increase our depreciation amounts. So right now, even though we show expenses of $155,000, that's capacity to spend in case one of our vehicles are damaged in an accident, get totaled. We need to have that capacity to spend, or else I have to request a budget extension. Hence what ended up happening this year. So we would, if we spent the 155, we'd end with the fund being at about 153. We don't tend to plan to do that, but we would be upwards of 300,000 if we don't in that fund. The next big piece under general fund is regarding levies. So with the change in the legislature this last year, our voter-approved levy currently is just over $4.6 million. So in November, when I certify the 2020 levy, I'm going to certify at the full $4.6 million because that's only $1.99 per thousand.
For
And
2020, not for
for
the
2020.
first half of the year.
Yeah, for 2020. So I'll certify that in November. That's only $1.99 per thousand, and we can go up to $2.50. Okay, so we'll be able to certify our full levy. But for the budget for next year, October, I'm still rolled back because it's under the 2019 levy rules.
Right.
So that $544,000 is my rollback for October.
Okay.
And then I'll get my full collection come April. So that is much better than what we saw this year, because this year we saw about 3.6 million as far as total collectible, and I'm able to go up to 4.1 for next year, and then we're up for levy after that. So that's sort of a brief explanation of what you see going on there. Your following pages, it breaks it down into percentages. So if you're wanting to know how much is being spent on certificated salaries, that's on the very bottom of the second page. You're looking at about $15.1 million. Classified salaries are about $6.7 million. It will break it down into not only budget amounts, but actual percentages. I would not expect to see any of the payroll or benefit percentages or amounts change, because the salaries and benefits are set for the budget. What's going to change is what we consider the MSOC spending, just the additional spending everywhere else, okay? And then you'll see what we're budgeting as far as student FTE, certificated employees, and classified employees. And you can see that increase from year to year on staffing as well. I know this is a super brief overview, but the fact that it's a rough draft, I'd hate to get into a lot of details right now and have it all changed. Do you guys have any questions just regarding the brief overview that I presented?
With regards to, getting down into line items and program line items and stuff like that, where does the authority to spend that money go? I mean, is it program chairs have the ability to spend their budgeted amount, and is there a limit as to what point they need to go through your office and say, yeah, go ahead and do that, or no, let's hold off? How does that part work?
We're working on that.
We, the two of us, have to approve everything.
Mhm.
We have, the district has been a little more flexible in the past than we plan to be this coming year. So one of the things, for example, Ashley is working with the buildings. to move purchasing into the central office rather than individually at buildings, so we
Okay.
can have a better handle on what different people are deciding they need to do, and make sure, because our goal is to have everything we do align with the frameworks we've created as a district and as building, but we have to have some accountability for
Right.
that. That isn't necessarily built into the system. So we've created new frameworks for how we do financial things that we'll be introducing with the building leaders and the office managers in August.
Yeah, so we are currently undergoing a shift. That's literally the only reason I paused. Dan and I were just talking about it yesterday. So our goal is to get in front of the spending and not behind the spending.
And I mean, just from my perspective, I think it's a good tool, communication tool as to why that it's not a Mother May as opposed to the board wants the tight control, but also with that bigger battle at the state level with trust issues and money and all that
Yeah.
stuff, showing that what you're giving us, this is what we're spending and why we're having to do it. And
Well, and I have to
those
be honest.
implications of your decisions.
Correct.
We're one of very few districts in the state that, the big three that are always in the red aren't in North Mason: special education, food service, and transportation.
Mhm.
That is very unusual. We have very tight control already around our budgeting and how we spend and how we hire and all of those things. But we want to be very clear that we have really strong goals for the district, and the decisions that we make need to start with, we said we were going to do this for kids.
Right.
So is buying those smelly markers in line with what we said we were going to do for kids? So we're wanting to be really, we don't want to be Big Brother,
Mhm.
Yeah.
but we want to be sure that with the limited resources that we have, we're doing the most that we can for our kids.
Yeah, and it's ensuring that we're correctly guiding staff to follow, the correct and proper channels and procedures when it comes to purchasing. Because like I said earlier, we have a lot of staff and they know their bucket,
Mhm.
but we see the big
Right,
picture.
right.
And so we have put some stop gaps in place going into next year because it will be a tight year. But it will be a tight year in which we didn't riff, we didn't lay off.
Right.
We have the staff that we came into the year with. There's some program shifts, but overall, we're doing well. So now it's just making sure that we're gonna maintain that. So any other questions, comments, concerns?
Yes, you mentioned much earlier in the whole board process about the SEB. Does that mean State Employee Benefits?
Mhm.
School
School
Employees
employees.
Benefits Board. So Craig alluded to, there's a Public Employees Benefits Board that pre-existed this. And one of the options would have been to put all the school employees into that, and that wasn't the decision that was made. They decided they needed to create a separate one for school employees. And so beginning in January, it goes into effect. And what that means is, we've been so proud again of the work that Ashley did in negotiating our benefits, so that the benefits package our employees currently have, we have six employees.
Total employees out of nearly 400 that pay a
who
single
have
penny
any
towards
penny
benefits.
out of pocket for buying their benefits. That also is nearly unheard of. Under the SEB program that we have to do, but everybody will have to pay something. Some could pay a very small amount, but the benefit package that we negotiated for our employees goes away, and everybody will have to pay something. So,
My question's gonna be really, is that gonna make is that a wild card difference that it's gonna make in the budget? No?
We budgeted for it. It took a few extra steps this year because on top of everything else with SEB, there's 3 different funding rates for benefits for next year. So Carolyn and I worked together. We added 3 separate benefit lines, and we captured that benefit percentage difference for each one of those periods in order to accurately reflect what our actual benefit costs will be. Our benefits and salaries in here at $31,197,000. It is accurate. That is what it will be to include the cost of SEB.
Good for you for being that ahead of it.
Yeah, we're trying to build a budget for next year to stay ahead of any to know whether or not there will be any issues. And that's been the goal. So unlike last year where I came up here with a fancy presentation at this point the year, we're not there yet. We're trying to really work through these numbers and make sure that when we do present, that it is something that we can really rely on. So,
Excellent.
perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item that I bring to your attention is just a short one-page report from our partners at Little Toasters. This is a program that builds leadership and public speaking skills for our youngest female students. We limit participation at each building to a small number of students so that they can get maximum benefit from the program. And the program provided this report for the board, and I just wanted you to see that. And there's some really cool things in here that kids showed improvement, going from liking to speak in front of class from 50% of the girls who participated initially said they did to 87%. So we're really proud of this program, and we're glad we're going to continue to work with them and help build some skills and confidence in our elementary school female students.
That was also a nice little story at the end, too.
Yes, it was.
It's a 37% increase, not a 17%.
Oh, that's correct. We'll have to let them know that.
It sounds really good to me. I, of course, speak out of certain professional interest. But particularly, I think a program like this early on that puts people in a position where they can speak in public and respond to questions is important. And I've observed, in my experience, that female students consistently give way to male students when it comes to answering questions. And I've done what I tried various things within my own resources to change that. I would point it out and urge women students not to let the men dominate questions. I reached one of the limits of my capacities. I was not able to change that. And just suggest to me perhaps something lacking in my own preparation for this problem, or perhaps a deep cultural something that needs to be addressed early on, so that mere therapeutic, come on, would be enough to tip it over. But I've tried this several times in several classes, and the results are uniform. Maybe there'll be a little change in one speech or something, but let a couple rounds go past after I've given my pep talk, and all's exactly as though I'd said nothing. So I approve of this heartily. I think it's necessary. This is a central skill of being an active civic person, and I think women need to be as articulate as men and as bold when it comes to letting their views be known in public meetings.
I'm not going to follow that up.
Okay. And the last item in the superintendent's report is just wanting to brag a little bit more again that we had another outstanding Washington State Patrol inspection report of our transportation department. We included that letter for you as well.
A little comment regarding that. When I go to other camps as what's formerly called as a visitor to do the accreditation visits to other camps, one of the things which I learned from here some years ago is that Washington State inspection sticker on a bus tells me what the standards for the camps. It meets the standards for the camps, and that's all I have to see for a camp that is doing transportation of kids. When I see that, it answers about 10 different questions just by itself, which is a really useful thing. In any case, that's what all our buses have, that sticker too. Anyway, so just a little aside.
Thank you.
All right. Laura is aware of her board letter for this month, so I think, has she turned that in yet, or is she still working on it?
I think she's still working
All
on
right.
it.
Number 5, assurance of organizational performance policy review. Administration does not write a monitoring general policy. These are just the board guiding documents. I'm just gonna breeze over that one.
I would like to make some comments.
Oh,
on
okay,
that
I'm
one.
sorry, go ahead.
Rather than breeze through it. I would like to see us as a board, since these are the GP, they're our policies, we, you know, we wrote them, we have to rewrite them or whatever we want to. I would like to see us look formally, maybe in a separate board meeting or at just another, you know, again, 3 of them.
Okay, which ones?
GP 2-E7, which is director district boundaries. I'd like to see a discussion about that.
Okay.
I don't want to elaborate any reasons why now, but just to look at that.
We put it on the
Because
agenda
after
for
all,
next
we are
month.
having the census coming up, which is going to affect that
Mhm.
in
Oh,
particular.
mhm.
Second one is GP 4E2, which is the board self-assessment form that we use every board meeting. I'd like to have us review that and maybe change it if we think so or not or whatever, but I'm feeling a little bit myself that we need to look at that.
Okay.
And then the third one is GP 8-E2, which is the linkage responsibility, or response document. When I looked at that, because I looked at all of these just to see,
Mhm.
should we do anything, and those were the ones that stood out, but that one in particular, we've had it all these years and we don't use it. Not that we should. I'm guilty of, as we all are, of not having used that. That document is just simply when we make some contacts with Kiwanis Club, Lions, or Rotary, or whatever, or groups or whatever, and we hear comments from those people about school issues, we should be filling that document out.
Oh, okay.
So that we have a record.
And add
of-
that to the
Yeah,
board
I would like
packet.
to see us have some discussion about those 3 in a case. That's, for
Okay.
whatever it's worth, you're the president, you get to do
Yeah,
to do that.
can we put that on the
August
policy
will
review?
be, yeah, let's put it on the policy review
next week.
calendar. August is a pretty long board meeting
Is
with all you're gonna have to do with budget.
Oh, okay.
But when we meet to discuss the agenda, let's look at where we want to put
Okay.
them. Maybe do one of them next month and the
Yeah.
other 2
Yeah, 'cause
subsequently.
all 3 of those, I liked it.
You're interested in that too?
Yeah, let's
Okay.
get moving on. I mean,
I don't know that we have to change anything, but I'd just like us to review that, so.
no, it'd be good probably to go
Yeah.
through. And I apologize for kind of skipping over that. Going through those, I very rarely,
Right. They're pretty good ones,
Yeah.
actually.
and they've served well, so.
Right.
Okay. So
Okay.
we'll do that, and then we'll look at where we can fit those in then. ER2, which is organizational continuity and executive succession. Everybody has their copy of the monitoring report. I would entertain a motion to approve or find the superintendent's performance to comply with the requirements of ER2.
I would like to move that we find the superintendent's performance on ER2 to comply with the requirements that we've set out.
All right, and discussion.
Yeah, I thought it was particularly the thing that Dana wrote to go along with this was particularly persuasive. You can look at it in the first line, you see who's next in succession. And I thought it was a very clear and persuasive document. Part of it, I'm judging, if I were asked about this, I would have to use this as an answer, and it would be very useful as an elected official if I were asked that question to refer to this, because it's very clear.
I'm happy to see an assistant superintendent return to the district. We had that for a while, and I know we lost it when the recession occurred, and it's now taken this long to get it back. But as a person who geeks out on organizations, it's nice to see a proper span of control and the fact that, you know, things are separate out and responsibilities outlined, and it's manageable. So, any other comments? All right, all those in favor of accepting the monitoring report and finding the superintendent
In compliance.
performance in compliance, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, E5, responsible citizens.
I can only reiterate what I've said before.
Hold on a
Oh,
second,
we're
we have a
waiting
motion.
for a motion.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to move that we find the superintendent compliant with respect to the requirements of E5, responsible citizens.
And discussion.
I have some. In looking at the monitoring report, and particularly at the bottom, I really appreciate the depth of the stuff that you've given us here. But the charts on the bottom, I had some difficulty with, which I mentioned to you a little earlier, so I want to bring that up. The charts, in particular, the wording, the word average, and then the words, what was it? I didn't write them down here. Anyway, the word average, and then whatever it is. In any case, where is it? Right there. Number of incidents per student at each school. It's confusing to me to read how these charts work when you say average, and yet it looks like it's number of incidences specifically, and it isn't clear that those are averages. Is the average for the school? Is it the average for one kid? Is it the average for all the kids, or whatever? It's not clear. And so, well, when I took that word average out, when I took the word incidents per student at each school, I understood it better, although it turns out I was reading it wrong. And so it's,
I like
there
that,
is an
understanding it
average
better,
there,
but
yes.
reading.
There is an average there, it's just not clear. And so maybe, Dana, you could explain it a little bit better, because...
Yeah, really what we're looking at, and I appreciate the comments because we work with the company that produces Homeroom to disaggregate our data and front load these reports for us, so we can work with them to make them more clear, and so I appreciate that. What it is the average number of incidents per students who have incidents
Right.
per school. So, it's not of the 600 kids at the high school, all of them have, what if the number were 3? It's not an average of 3 for every 600. It's if there are 50 kids who have them, they have an average of 3 times of having different incidences in the.
Right, and so to read that first graph, it shows that, which wasn't clear, it shows that for a kid who is sometimes having an incident, the trend has been down. Kids, instead of having up to 20 the average, or call it 15, so, well, 18 on that first, two years ago, that's dropped down quite a bit to 4. So kids that are having troubles, and mind you, I like having kids have troubles because that's how they learn, but having the troubles, they're having less of those troubles, those kids. And that's how to read that differently from what I first saw.
So, and the one thing I want to point out about that top graph too is, and the reason we look at that is we are responsible to the state, and it's part of our state report card to look at, are we treating all kids in the same way? Do we have more kids of color or more kids with special needs or more kids who are homeless as a percentage who receive discipline than our general population? And we have some places we're doing what we would like to see there. We would like to see that the baby blue columns, which indicate all kids who have those things, we would like to see all of the lines that indicate other subgroups at the same place that the top of that is. We're not quite there, but we're getting closer. And I do point out that our bilingual education students district-wide receive fewer incidents per student who receives incidents than the general population, but our kids with special needs, our homeless kids, and our kids on free and reduced lunch are still just a little bit above the average, so we have some equity work to continue to do. And that might not be equity about how we give out discipline, but how are we helping those kids come to school being prepared to be ready for school so that they're not having an unusual number of meltdowns or different kinds of discipline problems that are a result of what happens with them outside of school or that they don't have control over in the case of special needs students. So that's, again, that MTSS work, that work we're doing with building supports for kids in all areas of our school. So we're really addressing the whole child to get to that well-educated child. That, again, indicates we're probably headed in the right direction, but we have a little more work to do to get where we want to be there.
It's nice to see on just the incident counts, that bottom graph, that bar graph there. I mean, from 2 years ago, those are
Yeah,
mar-
16, 17
significant
was a tough year.
improvements. Yeah, significant improvements. All right, so we have any other discussion on that? That one was E5, responsible citizens. All those in favor of finding the superintendent has reasonably interpreted the provisions of the ends policy and making satisfactory progress, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. E2, student success monitoring report. I'll entertain a motion for E2 to, one, superintendent has reasonably interpreted the provisions of the ends policy and the district is making reasonable satisfactory progress towards achieving the desired result. I'd love for it to pull up.
I know, I'm having the same
Are
problem
you?
right now.
Okay.
It's not pulling up the,
No, it's like we lost Wi-Fi or lost connectivity.
Yeah, I did too.
Yeah, we're getting the never-ending circle.
Well,
regardless, I would like to move that we find the superintendent has reasonably interpreted the provisions of the ends policy, period.
Okay. Discussion.
You ready?
I would tend to agree.
Okay, this one's a funny one.
Okay.
This is really just for levity because it's not terribly important. But on page 4 of that document, the response document, it refers to shared principles, and it's spelled principles, P-A-L-S. And
I
that makes you
got
think the
caught by
kids-
spell
Oh,
check.
that puts
You
the
saw
whole
that too?
thing in a different light for me.
No, I didn't. I got caught by automatic spell check and didn't catch that.
If you can
Thank
lose
you.
$60,000 because of no
Get it
comma.
right there, right
So you
there.
see, student success is measured on how often they can share their principles with each other.
Well,
Dan.
some of
and
this
all that
raises
stuff.
serious questions.
Anyway, that was it.
We'll have to adjust it before it
Right.
goes into the final.
It was the AL instead of the LE.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
This was like for me personally, this was a policy I had a tough time accepting when we talked about it earlier because I thought that we're really starting to put perhaps these very strict parameters, and a lot of these things, in my opinion, are very subjective.
Mhm.
But I was glad to see the responses of them, and that it seems like, okay, we can work with this. This is good. It kind of it settled my fears on this one a little bit, that this would, us getting almost into the weeds on this one, and I know staff had a lot to do with it, but it's still, my fear was you really opening up to, I don't want to say excessive criticism, but really setting up for failure.
Well, and I kept in mind, the discussions we'd had about that in writing this report, because when we were discussing the changes here, I gave you lists and lists and lists of different data points we could use for each bullet point. And I could have produced a 400-page report, but
Appreciate you not.
I was
Yeah.
trying to think about what were things that we needed to highlight, some good, some concerns, that are really what we're going to be focusing on, that are part of the blueprints we've developed for our year in the coming year.
Mhm.
And so I pulled those pieces out to really take a look at, and starting with the English learner assessment, because we had some real strong growth there, and that we haven't had that for a number of years, and I wanted to make sure that you had the opportunity to acknowledge the hard work, particularly that our 6th grade teachers at the middle school were doing with getting some success in students developing English language abilities in our newcomers and new to the country students. So that was very exciting. And that was also cutting and pasting a portion of our new state report card, because it looks so different. And I think in each report I will put little pieces of that in, rather than pull up the whole report card and go over it with you all at once, because it just gets so long and mind-boggling. But we have some good things happening. We have some things we want to work on, but
Fair enough.
here we go.
Any other comments regarding E2? I still hold a little bit of anxiety with regards to that, but
Because,
What's that?
your anxiety because,
I think when we're talking about personal skills development, social skills development, I mean, it's how can we measure that
True.
into
Yeah.
a way that is actually measurable, or
Mhm.
just kind of. But I mean,
That's
what
okay.
data points do we have to say, yeah, we're making progress, and how is what I think is progress maybe lines up with what you think is progress, and it just opens yourself up to these gaps that of really values of what I value versus what you value versus what you value, and maybe even what the kids value. I just
Well, and that's why, particularly in those two areas, we will rely pretty heavily on our CEE perception data. We'll rely on the SABRS, the report, the assessment that we do multiple times with a year with kids about, are they feeling safe? How's their mental health? How's their level of self-confidence and those kinds of things? So we'll use some of that data in the future, but in a way to show here that we are working on this and showing growth, not that we want to measure every single answer on every single question and discuss it ad nauseum, but because that's what our teachers and our principals do to build effective programs for our kids.
I'm interested in seeing, the general direction, and I really like your references to critical thinking skills in this, because boy, do we need that,
Here,
Yeah.
here.
right?
Yeah, I completely sympathize with what Craig is saying, and I will try not to play too many old tapes on this, but people in the humanities have this problem all the time. How can you measure what you do? And there are times when I think simply the affirmation of standards and hopes or expectations is itself an important statement about who we are and the direction in which we would like to see our students grow. I wouldn't discourage refinements on measuring it,
Right.
but there is a problem here that is older than we.
right.
And I think there is value in raising this up as one of the standards by which we see progress or preparation for the good life in society from our students.
Well, and we saw it when we met with the seniors, and even when we met with the student leadership teams, and the feedback that we've gotten, especially from the high school, with regards to the lack of almost a hierarchy of class standing. That you see, I'm a sophomore, I can't hang out with you because you're a senior. There's that interaction there. And one of the best lines I heard, whether it is, the seniors don't let, when we talked about bullying, and one of the best lines the kids said was they wish that our parents understood what bullying was, and what we see in high school, and they would understand that gap and realize that, you're going to have your normal personality conflicts and things like that, but when it comes to aggression, that there was a really protective element from the upper class people to not allow that to happen. And I mean, it's the students kind of regulating themselves, and that sort of stuff is in here. But once again, it becomes my view of civility versus your view of civility versus your view of civility. It's just it becomes. Going from what our first draft of E2 was to this, it's a lot better for me to stomach. So that's just my soapbox on that particular.
Yeah, I'm glad that you referenced, Craig, the meetings we've had, because I think though only a select number of students were there when we would meet and talk to the kids of virtually, march through the grades. The very experience of being heard by those who govern and their opinions being taken seriously was an experience I didn't have in school. And I think it really makes a statement about what it is to live in a society that rests on opinion.
Yeah.
And I think that they were heard, listened to, and that when a thing couldn't be done, it was explained to them why. I think being part of that process of deliberation was healthy and is some measure of what's going on in the schools. If there wasn't something that was moving in that direction, the discussions would have been impossible.
All right, so we'll go ahead and vote on this one. Got a motion to find the superintendent has reasonably interpreted the provisions of E2 and further find that the district is making reasonable and satisfactory progress towards achieving the desired results called for in E2. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right. B is policy review, which was E4, school engagement, which I believe you guys looked at last month.
In June.
Right.
Mhm.
Are there any, oh, we're getting that too. Any notes on any maybe changes that we want to see or anything that we want to alter with that policy for the next time around? Or are we good with it?
I'm good with it.
Okay.
Those of us that were here last time, we didn't have any issues with it.
All right. Moving on then from that, we go to 6, the meeting schedule. So normal board meeting is third Thursday of every month. However, the Washington State School Director Association Annual Conference is also held that week during the month of November. Policy states that if a board meeting date falls on a holiday, the board meeting will be held the preceding Tuesday. The board usually schedules the November board meeting on the preceding Tuesday, November 19th. And if a quorum is available on the date, the board may adopt November 19th as the date of the November 2019 board meeting. So we need to take action to adopt November 19th, 2019 for our November board meeting. And if we will have a quorum to hold a board meeting that night. I would entertain a motion to, if we find that acceptable.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to get on board with December 19th.
November.
Oh, November. I think 19th is nice too in December, but I have a particular preference for November 19th, and that we have our meeting then because we want to attend the WASDA confab later in the week.
Anybody, a discussion, any scheduling conflicts? Oh,
When's the conference date start?
It usually well, they have the pre-conference, but it starts on the Friday? Friday, Saturday, Sunday?
Mhm.
So I think that would start on November 22nd.
Okay.
But we tend to be going to the
Yeah,
pre-conference.
we
Yeah,
usually
we-
go earlier
Yeah,
first.
so,
Yeah.
And then
Well,
some
it's in
people,
Bellevue this
hey,
year.
you're, oh,
Yeah.
I'm hoping that one day you will
or
be.
does it
on.
must start on the 21st?
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah, because it adjourns on Sunday, so it starts Thursday, the 21st.
I trust one day you'll return to your rightful place on the policy committee, and of course
Oh.
you'll be there.
We'll see. I gotta clear my work schedule for
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
So, all right. All those in favor of adopting November 19th, 2019 for the November board meeting, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
It's opposed. Boom. It's done. Adjournment. Good of the order. Have anything for the good of the order?
No.
Do you have anything for the good of the order?
This was when we were talking about the bullying, and I was wondering if not, it doesn't have to be anytime soon, but maybe a thought of writing one of our letters.
Here, here.
And I was thinking about doing that this last time, and I spent a lot of time thinking about it, and it wasn't the time of year for it. It would have been passed over, and I think it should be put in maybe at the beginning of the year, or maybe a month or two in, just with some good wordage.
Yeah.
I think it would be worth it, because that's when my kid comes home and he goes, "I'm bullied all day," and then when we get down to it, he was being a jerk, like all the things that came down to it. He wasn't actually bullied, but what kids see, what their parents tell them, and this is elementary school, so parents talk to them, and then I see it on Facebook and I go, oh, that so wasn't how that was, so I think some wordage of kind of painting a picture of that would really, and then putting it out, like maybe on, our social media outlet for Belfair has been archived, the Belfair network. So a few of them have broke out, and so it's a little bit harder to see where people used to post in one spot. It's in 4 different places now. But if we put like a little link out there to say, hey, come visit this, because a lot of times it gets overlooked, our letters, but to share that with the community, I think would be really cool.
I think you have the October letter. That might be a good time to do it,
Yeah.
Oh,
if
okay.
you want to do that.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Very
Yeah, and
tough.
it'll be better in my head.
Okay.
It was
Yeah.
not,
Excellent.
I'm still opening a shop, so
Yeah, no,
it's,
absolutely.
Very timely topic. I really appreciate
Yeah.
you bringing it up.
Art, any good order?
Topic for the August one that I need to do, and when should that be turned in?
Denise, when should it be turned in?
What's that?
The Arts August letter?
Like within the first week or so,
The first week of August?
something like that, yeah.
Ooh, soon.
you know, when I always turn mine in, you know.
Well, Art, there are a lot of things to talk about with back to school, so, you know,
And
the new
lunch
school
thing.
year.
Well,
We can share some of the work we're doing with, you know, whole child stuff, and that we're really going to be focusing on the whole community part of that commitment this year, and we're looking for community members to participate in a variety of ways this year, not the least among those being the levy committee.
Whole bunch of things, right?
Yeah.
So I may have to sit down with you at some point to get some stuff fleshed out. The very end of July and the week that's the end of July and the beginning of August, I'm shot. Won't have time to write anything, but before or after that, I can work on stuff.
Okay.
John, do you have anything for good order?
Yeah, I think a couple of things here, more than 2, but under the general title of praise, I want to thank, as I've mentioned before, Dana and Ashley for their excellent heads up as well as substantive reports on what's happening with the budget. This is not an easy job to do, and then communicating what you found out clearly to an audience is not an easy job to do either. Just because there's truth doesn't mean you know how to tell it. And so I appreciate the way in which they have obviously given a great deal of care, not only to the substance, but to making clear what they found. So I think that's very important, and we're very fortunate to have their talents. And I also want to thank whoever is responsible for these computers. And if I praise a computer, that's about the best I can do because I hate them all. This is even better than MTA, Mason Transit, recently got some new computers. I kid. I went over to the corner and I got the written report, you know, for this. Hey, this thing works. You can touch it. You can make it do everything. It comes up on. Hey, this is really fine.
I'm an Apple girl, and I have to say it's a pretty nice computer.
A very minor thing. I noticed when Ashley was giving her report that at the top of this, various of the pages, it was John Campbell and everybody else. At the bottom of the pages, it was Dr. Campbell. I have graduated in the course of my life to John Campbell. I am working at coming out of life the way I entered it, just with my name. And so whatever people, that was a work card for a previous incarnation. Here and among everybody, there are no doctorates of school boarding. And so I just would like to be known as John Campbell, your neighbor down the street. So I've mentioned that. And for a completely good of the order thing, I have been listening on my audiobooks in the car thing, a book I didn't expect to be timely, but I think it's one that would be very timely for each of us to give some thought to, because it emphasizes the difference civility makes as a cultural norm. And the book is by Jay Winnick, and it is called April 1865, the month that saved the Union. Our country was founded most proximately at the end of the Civil War. Had Lee not surrendered, had his generals, and there were about 3 Confederate armies in the field, not gone for a Union, all they would have to have done is to say, let's conduct guerrilla war. And that is exactly what Jefferson Davis wanted them to do. And all of the generals in the field went for the civil thing. The shape of our country would have been entirely different had Lee, on that occasion, and I don't approve of his original decision to join the Confederacy, but this was the decision of a mature man that saw beyond the immediate. And I think the lessons, those qualitative things that we teach as norms, this is how a republic is preserved. And I think that book, I haven't finished the last disc yet, but I recommend it very highly for one's leisure reading. Jay Winnick, April 1865, the month that saved the Union.
I'm not ever going to hold my good of the order after you again. There's no point following up, so we'll just go to the board self-assessment of the meeting, which John,
Chip
non-Dr. John Campbell,
you.
is going to be doing. Do you have it up with you?
I just happened to.
That's not it.
Oh, no. Well, I can pretend though it is. I don't seem to have.
I don't think it's in my stuff here.
Oh, no, it's not. It's
Denise is bringing it up.
Okay. You want to start? All right. There it is.
Well, as everyone knows, present and watching us on TV, we are governed by policy governance. And that means we also govern ourselves and hold ourselves to certain standards. General meeting behavior, and there are a series of particulars here to which I commend your attention, those that are interested. Work was conducted in an atmosphere of trust and openness as one of the criteria. Meeting participants treated each other with respect and courtesy. Board members prepared for and contributed to the meeting. I think the quality of our discussion shows that. I won't go on each one, but I would certainly judge us to be satisfactory.
Yeah.
And governance principles review, and there are a series of particulars, and this is available online and all can see it. They include such things as the board minimizes time spent monitoring past performance, and yet we do consider it as the very fact of Art's talking about our reconsideration of certain policies that nobody saw anything wrong with. We need to revisit those to make sure that they're still functioning. The board chair helps the board efficiently conduct its meeting, yes. The board spends most of its time deliberating issues, defining and clarifying its vision, linking with its community as opposed to fixing things. I pledge to you and to my constituents, I don't think I've ever fixed anything. And I use that as a mark. We don't try to fix things. We try to understand what the administration is doing and let our attitudes be known. The board supports the superintendent in any reasonable interpretation of policies. I do think, in fact, we do. And our overall assessment is satisfactory.
Great. All right. Our next board meeting that you want to start signing those will be held here in the conference room, August 15th, 2019 at 6:30 p.m. And with that, we're adjourned.
All right.
I have
Thank
these
you.
new